I think it's very important to have debates, and we've agreed with Fox on a date of September 4th. We've agreed with NBC, fairly full agreement, subject to them, on September 10th. And we've agreed with ABC on September 25th. The other side has to agree to the terms. They may or may not agree. I don't know if they're going to agree. She hasn't done an interview. She can't do an interview. She's barely competent, and she can't do an interview. But I look forward to the debates because I think we have to set the record straight.
All right, so last week, Donald Trump ducked out of a September debate on ABC against Kamala Harris, but he didn't just duck. He proposed an alternate debate on Fox News instead, which Harris turned down. But today, Trump announced that his campaign is proposing not one, not two, but 3 presidential debates. And that's probably because he needs a way to breathe life back into his floundering campaign. People are calling him scared, they're calling him weak, and he can't have that. He might be overcompensating a little bit though.
Hey, don't scroll away. Come back. Because before the video continues, we just want to urge you to lend your support to TYT. You power our honest reporting. You do it at tyt.com/team, and we love you for it.
The clip you just watched was from an impromptu press conference that Trump only just announced today. Stephanie Grisham, who served in the Trump administration, wrote in response to the announcement this: regarding Trump's self-announced press conference today at 2 p.m., he's panicking. I've seen this play many times. He thinks his team is failing him and no one can speak better / save his campaign / defend him but him. He hates the coverage Harris is getting and thinks only he can fix it. Ironically, though, when asked if he would be changing his campaign strategy now that he's running against Kamala Harris instead of Joe Biden, Trump was adamant that no changes would be made. Look at this.
I haven't recalibrated strategy at all. It's the same policies, open borders, weak on crime. I think she's worse than Biden because he got forced into the position. She was there long before. She destroyed San Francisco. She destroyed California as the AG.
All right, last but not least, here is a quick montage of Trump whining about Kamala Harris and her crowd sizes and Biden dropping out all during the press conference.
If she becomes president, our country is going to be a giant fail. It's going to fail. It's going to be a failure the likes of which this world has never seen. Oh, give me a break. Listen. I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday? 2,000 people? If I ever had 2,000 people, you'd say my campaign is finished. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people. If not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. She turned on him too. She was working with the people that wanted him out. But the fact that you can get no votes, lose in the primary system, in other words, you had 14 or 15 people, she was the first one out, and that you can then be picked to run for president, it seems to me actually unconstitutional. Perhaps it's not.
How is he still going on about crowd sizes? Also, what venue even holds over 100,000 people? This is so frustrating. Trump is boring now, and he's got nothing new for anyone. This is his 3rd consecutive presidential campaign. So we really have heard everything he has to offer. He's basically in an entirely different presidential race than the one he started in, and yet he has no interest or capacity to pivot accordingly. Cenk, what was the point of this press conference? I feel like his supporters will support him no matter what. But do you think he helped himself and or his campaign here?
No, he's full-blown nuts, and he can't help himself. I think Stephanie Grisham is right. He thinks, as usual, I alone can fix this. I will get out there and say ludicrous things, and the American people will love me. My crowd was larger than Martin Luther King's. If you're not embarrassed by that, I don't know, man, you lost the thread at some point. Because first of all, even if that were true, and it's comically untrue, but even if it were, why would you even bring that up? Imagine that I did a speech and it got a crowd larger than Martin Luther King Jr. I can't imagine it, but let's imagine it for a second. Can you imagine me? And I'm a braggart, right? It's not like I'm shy, right? But I'd come in, oh yeah, my crowd size was larger than Martin Luther King Jr.'s. I mean, what kind of a jackass does that? Let alone what it isn't anywhere near true. And then did you notice the thing that he just kind of threw in there that, she didn't get enough votes when she was running for president, and then last time around, and now all of a sudden she's the presidential candidate. Could be unconstitutional, I don't know. Wait, are you saying that it might be unconstitutional for someone to get picked as the presidential candidate if they haven't won the presidency before? This happened like hundreds of times, including you. You hadn't won the presidency when you ran in 2016, and then you ran anyway, and you got the candidacy. Might be unconstitutional. I mean, doesn't it bother you that he's so stupid, and he doesn't know a thing about the Constitution, doesn't know a thing about policy, doesn't know anything about anything. It just gets out there and just blah, blah, verbal diarrhea everywhere. Let alone what he said about Tim Walz. Do we have that one, or should I just tell him?
Go ahead and tell him.
Yeah, Tim Walz, he says, he's so radical, he's doing abortions after birth. I know. Look, if you're MAGA, you're hopeless. You really believe that Democrats want to do abortions after birth? We have it? Okay, here, let's watch.
The Democrats are really the radical ones on this because they're allowed to do abortion on the 8th and 9th month and even after birth. If you look at your new governor from Minnesota, he's like the governor previous, the former governor. I don't want to get him mixed up because Glenn is doing a good job and he's leading our whole campaign in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. But previous to Glenn, the governor, he said the baby will be born, we will put the baby aside, and we will decide with the mother what we're going to do. In other words, whether or not we're going to kill the baby. The Minnesota gentleman, this guy agrees with that.
Look, I want to be clear. If you're hardcore MAGA, you really believe that, I know. You think that abortions can be done after birth. That's not even a thing. It's not in the definition of an abortion. It's just murder if it's after birth, okay? But I know, I can't talk you guys out of it. You're so deep in a cult, you can't get out, right? But for the rest of us, in the sane world, there are no abortions after birth. And if you decide after birth to terminate the baby's life, that's just called murder. And no one is in favor of it. No Democrat has ever said it. They took a thing that Northam said, where they're like, okay, well, if you think he might have said this, and then this, and then this, and then this, then it's a post-birth abortion. Purposely misinterpreting it, obviously. So, okay, look, it's the loons versus the non-loons. If you don't want to be a loon, don't do loony things. This literally never happened. No Democrat is in favor of it. Tim Walz is definitely not in favor of it. But if you want to live on planet Uranus, okay, have at it, Hoss. Go nuts. Go all the way inside Uranus and see how it turns out for you.
Uranus. Okay, well, that part about only I can fix it, he used that line when he was campaigning before, and it's an incredibly dangerous and narcissistic line of thinking. You don't want a leader who thinks that only he can do or fix anything, because it makes the people very dependent on that one person. That's how you get a dictator, and that's the kind of language he was using. But look, he's obviously panicking, and he's trusting the only person in his life that he can trust, and that's himself. And is Trump right to panic about his chances against Harris? Well, let's see what the most recent polls are saying. According to a Marquette Law School poll published yesterday, Harris is the choice for president of 52% of registered voters, and Trump is the choice of 48%. Among likely voters, Harris receives 53% and Trump 47%. When the ballot question explicitly includes third-party candidates, Harris receives 47% and Trump 41%. However, we got to give you the other side. A CNBC poll published today has Trump in the lead. Trump's 48 to 46% lead is within the CNBC survey margin of error and unchanged from the 45 to 43% lead Trump held against Biden in NBC News July survey. Independents break for Harris 40 to 36 in the presidential ballot race with 20% undecided. Her lead among independents is 4 points lower than Biden's in the July NBC survey. So let's talk about those undecideds, Cenk. There are plenty of Democrats who are holding out on support for either candidate because they want to hear what Harris's positions are on certain issues, Gaza, the border, criminal justice, et cetera. Granted, she's only been in the race for a few weeks and we haven't really seen her present her ideas and her platform to the American people yet. And obviously it depends on what those ideas are and what that platform looks like. But we sort of already know where she stands on things. But do you think we'll see those numbers budge in any direction, maybe once that happens?
So first of all, I thought that the numbers would go up for Kamala Harris versus Biden, and they have dramatically, massively. And so that's gratifying. And that lead is significant in that poll. Remember how I've been telling you for a year the Democratic candidate has to win by 5 in order to win the election, to be safe in winning the election because of the Electoral College. Now in that poll, she's above 5. So she'd actually win and safely if that poll is accurate enough. You have to get a combination of the polls. You can't just rely on one poll, but obviously she's trending in a wonderful direction. So look, you're never gonna agree with the policies of either candidate. I definitely don't agree with all of Kamala Harris's policies, and I agree with almost none of Trump's policies. So, but in terms of which way are the numbers going to go from now on, it's too hard to tell. I think that Kamala Harris is the favorite. I think that picking Tim Walz definitely helped her, and so we'll see how that plays out. But a huge war in the Middle East can break out any day now. And then what happens to the poll numbers at that point? Nobody knows, right? And look, this Donald Trump guy is a bona fide lunatic, and yet you can't get him, 40% of the country to recognize it. No, they say no. They hate the establishment so much that they're blinded by that rage, and they're like, this obvious pathetic con man. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds good, yeah. It might be unconstitutional to run against them, but it's not unconstitutional to try to create a riot and have fake electors and consider martial law and not mind your vice president being murdered by your fans. All of that is good. And by the way, Trump, if you remember, when he was a little baby and he didn't want to leave office, said that maybe we should suspend the Constitution.
Yeah. I mean, these people who still do not see Trump for who and what he is by now, they won't. They never will. They don't want to, because whatever they see in him, they see within themselves. And I guess they like it. I guess they like themselves. And the rhetoric coming from both sides is so different now. Trump is angry and he wants his supporters angry because the angrier they are, the more fired up they are to vote. That's so exhausting. I have to believe that after nearly 10 years of this, they're getting tired of being angry all the time, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in November.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a young Turk.